We thought of when we decided to do this series was, of course, the senior vice president and assistant general manager of the New York Yankees, Gene Afterman. We were just having a very funny conversation. Gene, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Gene.
We're just having a very funny conversation about, sometimes you got to drop a couple F-bombs to just let people know you're serious. And you are the head of compliance for the Yankees with COVID, along with all of your other responsibilities. And you said that's the best way to get the point across. Sometimes you just got to let people know you're serious.
I mean, I don't want to offend anybody, but that's the way they know that, you can't be polite. Some things you can't be polite about.
Yes, they're too serious.
Gene, your journey to where you are now, because it's been an unbelievable journey. It really has been. When you look back on it and the role that you have now with the Yankees, speak to that a little bit, Gene.
I kind of fell into baseball serendipitously. That's another thing, one of the things about the pandemic is that you get to catch up on a lot of your vocabulary words, but so I always take pride in my vocabulary, but in 12 months, I've vastly expanded it. So serendipitously.
Gene, are you taking the SATs at the end of this or what?
Who knows, go back to grad school. Get that degree in art restoration. I had never envisioned working in sports. I had worked in the movie industry below the line in feature film production in the 1980s, the wild and wicked 1980s in Hollywood. And so I never imagined sports as a career. I never even imagined being a lawyer as a career. And when I left Paramount Pictures to go to law school, and then when I finished law school, I thought that Paramount Pictures should want me back. Marvelous skill set, but I guess they didn't have a job for me. So I went to work at a small civil litigation firm, and there I met Don Nomura, who became my business partner, my comrade in arms, my brother from another mother. And he and I worked together representing Japanese players coming to the United States. And we kind of, discovered an interest in that when I was over in Japan working on a civil litigation case for him and interviewing witnesses and collecting evidence. Anyway, Hideo Nomo was our first client. And then we had Alfonso Soriano, because there was a Dominican to Japanese connection, and Hideki Irabu, Masato Yoshii with the Mets. We had Max Suzuki. We had a bunch of players. And our motto was no North Americans, because we felt that there were agents out there who represented North Americans, and nobody at the time was representing Japanese players. So now there are quite a few representing Japanese players.
So you go from the agent side, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was Kim Eng who had the job, and then you replaced her in 2001. So, going from the agent job now to the team side, what was the biggest adjustment there, and what do you think are the qualities you have that have suited you so well in this job and in this role?
Well, I'd also like to toss some, it's more than tossing bouquets. I'd like to note, and as I've noted before, that Brian Cashman and George Steinbrenner are the only two individuals who've had not one but two women assistant general managers back to back in all of professional sports. When I came to the Yankee front office, it was an incredibly diverse front office. I'd like to say that even though I lived in Manhattan from 80 to 85, the biggest adjustment was getting on the correct uptown train to get to the stadium once I landed. But it's a little bit like being a plaintiff's attorney and a defendant's attorney. So you have to see both sides of things in order to represent both of them. But shifting the mindset to the club was it was a learning curve, because you have to look at the basic agreement a different way, and you have to look at the major league rules a different way. But I like to think that, even in this sort of toxic labor environment that we're all in, I like to think that, we both have the same goals, both sides. And if both sides want to, enforce the rules and comply with the basic agreement and do it in a way that shows, responsibility and integrity, then hopefully, things work out. So but I remember there were some things where I did, for me, actually, the best part about switching from one side to the other was when I started negotiating contracts with my former colleagues on the agent side, and being able to say to them, oh, no, 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 no. No, that stays in the contract. Or,
I know that trick.
No, 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 no. I know what you're going to say, and moral turpitude is moral turpitude.
Yeah, right.
So,
I know that. You'd be like, I invented that.
that's right.
Gene, what was, Kim getting that opportunity in Miami, a historic hiring for the Marlins? What was more than qualified, overqualified for that opportunity, Gene? Finally getting that opportunity, what was your thoughts when that became official?
Well, speaking of the F-bomb, I think I was talking with my brother Raquel Ferreira up at the Red Sox at the time, and I think we both say, it was about, and I'll be polite here, about effing time. Kim is an extraordinary person. Her journey in baseball is sort of unparalleled. Raquel actually has the same thing. They work their way up from a low position all the way through baseball operations. And Kim has been qualified for quite a long time. And she's been the right person for a lot of these jobs. And I also, listen, I think it's a testament to Derek Jeter and the Marlins that they had the courage, and I think it does take courage, even in this day and age, that they hired Kim because she was the best person, for the job. And I think she'll be great. I read an interview actually the other day with her where she said that she doesn't, she doesn't want to be the first, woman GM. Nobody you're hanging your hat on. She wants to be known as like a great GM. So she wants to do the job and do it well, which I've no doubt she will do.
We're talking with Jean Afterman. She's a senior VP and assistant general manager for the New York Yankees, as we're honoring influential and inspiring women during Women's History Month here at the Fan. And, Jean, been a couple tough stories in baseball recently, and what it kind of boils down to is representation, having women at all different levels and ranks throughout baseball organizations and franchises. And I'm curious if you have advice out there for women who want to get into baseball at whatever level, whether it's executive, scouting, whatever it may be, sort of to get more women and to have more representation in these teams. How can baseball get there?
Well, I think, I know that it's been a focus of the commissioner and the commissioner's office. They have a lot of really good people there who have dedicated themselves for quite some time to this. Dan Halem and Paul Mifsud, and also Commissioner Manfred. This has really been a focus for them. But you also have to have the people who are hiring, buy into it. I think that, look, it's still, unfortunately, a man's world, or as the great James Brown said, a man's world. And women have to be bigger, better, faster, smarter to get the same job that a man would be considered for. But I do believe that in baseball, we're in unique times in front offices. And I think I've said this before, where it's really the quality of your intellect and your skills and your talent that get you hired. We have a lot of GMs out there who never played the game of baseball, which used to be a qualification. And they're doing, a fine job. And I think that intellect is gender blind. So, smarts, doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, although I have to say that, a little smarter. And I just learned the word for that. I think misogyny is the opposite of misogyny. But so I'm not being misogyny, although I probably have mispronounced it. But I think that for young women coming into baseball, it's important to see that there are currently women at every level in the game. And I have an old-fashioned idea that if you do the work, if you work hard, and you do the work, then the rewards will come. I think the extra thing is that I read an article recently by a woman athlete in Canada, where she mentioned that people talk about shattering the glass ceiling, but they don't talk about, and Maggie, I know you must have experienced this as well, they don't talk about sort of the cuts and bruises that you get, the small cuts and bruises that you get from the glass shattering on you. So that there are little slights that happen in our daily lives in the sports business that, for the moment you put your head down and you just keep moving forward. I think those little slights are becoming less and less. But it's a matter of moving forward, just keeping the river going.
Yeah, Gene, you're so right about that. And it's almost, it's harder because the little slights are the ones that are the toughest to kind of defend against, right? You're not going to make a big deal about a little slight, but when they happen over and over again, it's hard not to notice it. And I think, again, it comes with not just, women being in more places, but I say this all the time. It's about men. It's about men helping women, and understanding and being, gender blind to intellect and understanding a woman's value. And when that chance comes to have that slight, to realize, what you're doing, first of all, and secondly, just to not do it. And we need men's help when it comes to that.
Yeah. And you have to have, you have to have a little bit of a core of steel and, confidence to get over the bruises. That I'm lucky. I work for an amazing general manager, my 20th season with him. 6 years before that, we were pounding the table and hollering at each other. We still do that a little bit, but, we're both on the same side now. But, I work for an amazing general manager, Brian Cashman, who obviously has, saw something in me. And the group that I work with in baseball operations throughout the Yankee organization, the men are fantastic, clubhouse on up. So I'm one of the lucky ones.
Gene, do you get around Major League Baseball, because it's been an eye-opening offseason, the change that needs to happen? Are you getting a sense that the movement to change is happening around the sport?
I do. I think that it's always a difficult thing when women talk about gender discrimination or sexual harassment, because it's a broad legal term. And as a matter of fact, not only can men be sexually harassed, but men, sexual harassment is not just the victim, but it's also the people who observe this behavior who can have a claim that, was disturbing to them. So I think that always, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm full of aphorisms today, but where there's a will, there's a way. And there, the primary thing has to be that people need to want change. And then, this is all taking place in the background of the COVID year that we've had and the COVID year that we're going to continue to have. So I think it's people's focus on doing the right thing may be a little bit scattered, but I do see change. I see people being very aware of these things. I see clubs making efforts to be gender diverse and diverse, making great efforts to do so. And I think that the women that are in the sport, and by the way, have been in the sport long before me and Kim, right. Have established the precedent that women do these jobs and do these jobs really well. So I think that is going to move the change forward. And in addition, I notice, I'm sorry, I'm just babbling on, but I notice the young women coming into the sport have unique, young men and women have unique qualities of equality. Mm. So, the men and the women, the young men and the women that work in my department have a wonderful vision of equality that probably wasn't there 20 years ago. Like, they watch out for each other, for one thing. The women also have a voice. I think that's the problem in the past. Women historically have not had a voice or have not used their voices. And, people need to be heard. It can't all go on in your head. You need to actually express these things in order for change to happen.
Gene Afterman is our guest. And Gene, you're not babbling at all. This is fantastic. And we appreciate you carving out this time for us and making time for us. We know it's the opening day is still 10 days away or whatever. This is a busy time of year. But that's interesting you say about the next generation. I think that's really encouraging, because I was going to ask you, what's your advice for men? Like men who maybe haven't worked with women a lot. And we see that happening in sports. It's whether it's sports talk radio, whether it's baseball, football, it doesn't matter. You're not going to have 50-50 splits yet in these kinds of organizations. So do you have any advice for men about working with women and sort of some things to keep in mind?
Well, I think, there are a lot of things. I got a scroll of advice, but I think, in no particular order, I don't believe that men are from Mars, women are from Venus thing. But men and women are quite different, and we approach problem solving quite different. And you have to, you can't pretend that there aren't any differences, because there are differences. So I think, though, that you have to be aware that maybe behavior that was okay 5 years ago is not okay now. I mean, for men, you can't flip out if you're accustomed to saying, hi guys. I mean, that's something that I say. If you say hi guys, you can't worry that people are going to be insulted by that, because that's, you just have to be a little bit smart, and recognize also certain basic things. Like, if you were going to say to Mark, hey, you're looking really good these days, then it's okay to say it to you. I mean, imagine what you're just about to say to a woman, you would say to a colleague. Like, would you say to a colleague, hey, wow, your hair looks, amazing today. So, just in your mind, think of the genders as the same. And then for the women, I hate when I heard there was a situation at a high school where, did you guys know about this? There's something in high schools across the country called Slap-Ass Fridays.
No.
Yeah, well, I think that's, effing, I'm trying to be very polite here, appalling. But apparently there's Slap-Ass Fridays where boys think it's okay to slap a girl's ass on Fridays. I mean, in this day and age. And the girl, one of the girls complained to her teacher, and the teacher said, oh, just ignore it. So I think the advice is you can't ignore it. Yep. If you ignore it, it's just going to remain the same. But I think that for young men, they need to look around you and see that there are women in positions all over the place, and just be sort of aware that for women also, aware that words have consequences. So, you have to think before you speak.
Jean, want to ask you.
No slapping asses on Fridays.
No
where's that school? I mean, good
that?
God. And what teacher is saying just ignore that? I mean, I'd like to think that we would have a better response there. That is just shocking to me. I'm speechless about that.
I heard that from a parent, and she was like, I'm marching in there. The minute those doors open, I am marching in.
Yeah, and everyone should be marching in behind her too.
Jean, where do you?
I'll go with you.
Yeah.
You've accomplished so much in the sport. You're an inspiration to women in professional sports. Sure. There's no question. But where do you think baseball's going? Not the Yankees in particular, but where do you think, Major League Baseball, the criticisms of the game, where it's too slow, not connecting with millennials, too regionalized at times. I feel like, and I'm a huge baseball fan, Maggie is as well, right? We talk baseball 24/7 on the Fan.
Right.
But we oftentimes, Gene, we're focusing on what's wrong with the sport instead of what's right with the sport. Where do you think baseball needs to go to continue to connect with fans and get its popularity back to where it once was?
Well, I think part of the problem is that I mean, this is just my opinion, that we spend too much time comparing ourselves to the NBA, to the NFL, to soccer, and that's not who we are. That's not who we are. We're a very social sport. For me, that's always been one of the beauties of baseball. You go to a game. It's a social event. You can talk to the friends or family you're with. You can talk to the people behind you. You can, you spend an afternoon or an evening at the ballpark. And so we have to embrace the social aspect of the game. Also, listen, the fact that you can turn around to somebody and not miss, a whole lot. But I also recognize that it is an enormous investment in money and time, and particularly for kids. A 7:05 game that doesn't end until 11 is probably not a good thing. But I think we have to embrace who we are and move more perhaps with the time, while holding on to some of that tradition that the people who are bringing kids to the baseball stadiums love. So all the problem is that what's lengthened the game is a lot of the way that players prepare now is that they're just smarter. They can take more pitches. They're more prepared. And when you talk about taking that preparation away from them, to me, that kind of sticks in my craw, because that's just sort of anti-science and anti-intellect and progress. So I think it's a delicate balance. Look, if we start, there are a lot of changes that are being proposed that everybody's saying, do it, do it, do it. Once those changes go in, people are going to throw up their hands and say, this is not baseball anymore. Yeah. So I guess I don't really have any suggestions other than I think it's the one thing about millennials is they don't like to be pandered to. That's what I learned. If they think that you're trying to pander to them, I read an article where somebody had started a millennial had started a very successful ad agency. And she said, the one thing that we do right that other agencies don't do right is that as a millennial, I don't want to be advertised to. Number one, I don't want celebrities talking to me. Number two, I don't want to think that you're going after me because I'm, 22 years old and I have money. So I think we just need to be a little bit smarter about the entertainment. We have people in the stadium for hopefully less than 3 hours. Yes. So it's incumbent, hopefully. It's incumbent upon us to figure out a way to make it cost effective, but also to entertain them for the 3 hours. And if you got to throw extra balls and whistles in there, do it.
Yeah.
We got to add esports in. Do it.
Do it.
Yeah, right. And gambling. I mean, all the things, right, that bring people to the table. Jean, you've carved out so much time for us. Thank you so much. I just have one last one for you. One last one for you, and it's more of an X's and O's sort of baseball along that line, too, because you've negotiated so many deals for the Yankees. I mean, that's your bread and butter. And I'm curious about, what are some of the factors, because the Yankee fans are going to be very interested in this. What are some of the factors that go into determining what kind of deals you offer to certain players that may have injury histories but yet are very big parts of the club, and what are the factors that go into those types of negotiations?
Well, I mean, there's a process. Number one, you have to have a person on the other side of the table who's willing to negotiate, and it's sort of the relative bargaining power of the parties. And there's a whole process and a little dance that goes into it, and so both sides are assessing risk. In guaranteed contracts, both sides are assessing risk. And there are ways for a club to kind of lessen that risk. There are opt-ins and opt-outs. There are vesting options. There are lower base salary, but higher PBs. There are all kinds of things that you can build into it. And even before you actually get there, there's always a pre-contract physical in which, the club and its doctors can assess the risk and then discuss with the player and the agent, what the issues are. And then sometimes, though, it'll come down to an absolute acute need. So when we get to the trade deadline, if we have a big need that needs to be filled, and maybe it's just somebody who has only the rest of the year and another year on their contract, you've got to just sort of cross your fingers and hope that it works out. But one of the things, of course, is what the payroll is. We have luxury tax that is constantly in the back of our minds. The penalties for exceeding the threshold have gotten more and more punitive. And so there's a lot of factors that go into it, but injury history is something that clubs and players are getting more and more aware. They're more and more aware of, and players themselves are becoming more aware of how to prepare for a game to sort of avoid those injuries. You can't avoid getting hit by a pitch, and sometimes you can't avoid, sliding and something gets broken. But there are ways that both sides will balance, the risk. And sometimes if you're very risk adverse and you come back with a whole set of things in a proposal, the player may just say, forget it, I can go over here and I can just have a straight, guarantee. So it's a little, I love the chess game.
Yeah.
You have to, and the job you have, Gene.
Gene, I just have one more, and that is fans returning. at the start of the season. It's only 20%, but still 20% is better than 0%. But
that's right.
Start of the season, having fans back in the Bronx at Yankee Stadium with baseball returning here 9 days away. How good is that going to be?
Oh, it'll be amazing. It'll be amazing. The one thing I'm kind of going to miss is, as a fan watching on television, I'm kind of going to miss the very level, crowd sound. It sounds like a full stadium. It sounds like everybody's having a great time. There are no booing. We know how the Bronx fans sometimes can be. I do expect, though, that even with 20% in the stands at the Bronx and Yankee Stadium, our Yankee fans are going to sound like, it's a full house. So it'll also be very intimate. I don't know if you've ever been out at the stadium, like when there's been a rain delay and it's like, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes.
And there are, so you hear everything. Everything. So everything.
Yeah.
Usually John and Susan, right?
John and Susan, but, the family down the, third base line or up in the stands, you hear everything.
That's your focus group there, Gene. If you ever need a focus group, just a 1 a.m. rain delay in the Bronx. Gene, again, thank you for this.
We
appreciate it. We wanted to talk with you.
Thank you for having me.
And we know it's a busy time. It's always a busy time, I'm sure. But we really do appreciate your perspective on everything. And thanks for being our guest today.
Well, thank you. And, keep the faith. Struggle goes on.
Wise words.